So in making a video a few weeks back, I received nearly 500 comments pertaining to an issue that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. If you haven't seen that video, it's linked in the description, and it covers some pretty extreme changes that I've seen in the drum industry. And I was honestly really relieved and grateful to know how many of you guys have spent time thinking about this exact same thing. Because before making that video, I was certainly guilty of looking at the drum industry and thinking to myself, am I the only one who sees this shit? And the answer is no, I am not, so thank you. Tons of you guys left amazing comments and insights on that video, whether it was teachers who had stories about the changing attention spans of their students, or marketing pros who went in depth about the YouTube algorithm changes, and there were tons of normal drummers who left insights as to why their own viewing habits have personally changed over this last year. There's so much good information in the comments section of that video, and I would encourage you to go read a lot of those comments because it's a fascinating look into the heart of our community and our industry. Now, I knew right away that I wanted to make a response video to address a lot of the comments there, but in a much longer format, because that original video was like maybe 9 minutes long, and it really only scratched the surface of this whole topic. But in trying to get some thoughts together for that longer format video, I was confronted with the reality that this topic is quite simply way bigger than the drum industry. See, the drum industry is really unique in that it usually stays isolated from the rest of the world. And in a lot of ways, I like that our little world belongs to us. And drummers oftentimes don't let our industry get infiltrated by politics or extremism or other ideas that might threaten our small community in some way. We're really good at protecting this community, and I kind of love that sometimes. But as an educator, when it comes to sharing my ideas with you guys, I oftentimes feel like I have to filter my ideas through the prism of drums, or else it's not really drum content anymore. And that's kind of what's happening here. It's not just our industry that's changing. It would be selfish to say that. The entire world is changing, and I have a lot of thoughts about why that is, thoughts that I didn't really expand in that original video. And I want to expand those thoughts with you guys and lay out some of my ideas for you in a new way, and yes, outside of the drum industry, because again, it can be quite isolated. So some changes are happening in the near future to the content that I'm going to create, and while this took me a few weeks to figure out, I think I finally know how I want to proceed. Now, quick sidebar, I have often said in my social media masterclasses that I'm not a huge fan of announcing your changes. Don't tell me what you're going to do, just fucking do it. But in this case, I feel like I owe you guys an explanation, and I don't want to leave you in the dark. So I am breaking my own rule here, and I'm giving you a heads up to some things that I'm going to be doing differently as we head into 2021. In the very near future, I will be launching 2 podcasts simultaneously. The first one is the Orlando Drummer Podcast, and this is one that I've been talking about making for years now. A drum podcast still allows me to speak directly to drummers, who's a group of humans that I am very passionate about, but a podcast format gives me a platform where I can really open up my ideas about the drum industry and really dig into some of the things that I see in our industry specifically. It gives me a way to provide detailed feedback to students, to explore my ideas about content creation, to discuss complicated rhythmic concepts in depth, or give really nuanced career advice to people who want to do things similar to what I've done in the drum industry. So this podcast will be exclusively for members of OrlandoDrummer.com, though the first episode and a whole lot of other content from that podcast will make its way onto social media and onto this channel. Because in my eyes, a drum podcast is just the easiest way for me to cater to an entertainment-based market while still keeping a really heavy focus on education, self-improvement, content creation, and all the other things that I like to focus on this channel. Now, the second podcast that I'm launching is free to the public, like a normal podcast, and this podcast is called All In with Adam. And as the name implies, we will be going all in. So philosophy, religion, politics, drugs, relationships, and just about anything else you can imagine are all on the table. And I would be lying if I told you that I wasn't really excited and also really scared about starting a second business, because I've only started one business in my entire life. I've only had one platform for my entire life, and it's this one, Orlando Drummer. So I don't know what happens when I start another platform, and I don't know what happens when I start sharing my views with the internet about shit that is not being passed through this filter of drums. But I'm hopeful that you guys will give me a shot in some areas and some topics that I've never spoken about publicly before, because the older I become, the more passionate I become about about sharing knowledge with younger generations. And this new platform outside of the drum industry gives me a chance to share and talk about a lot of things that I have learned in my life that don't have anything to do with the music industry. So how does this affect my relationship to the drum industry? Well, I can tell you that my drums aren't going anywhere, this studio isn't going anywhere, and I cannot envision a world where drums and drummers are not a part of my life. That will never happen. But over the last 10 years, I have made somewhere in the ballpark of 2,500 drum videos. And I don't mean this in a pessimistic way, but that is enough for a lifetime. I cannot convince myself that the world needs more drum lessons from me, because that feels egotistical if I'm being honest. Now, to my YouTubers, I know that you guys are used to free lessons, and my public lessons on YouTube are undoubtedly some of my favorite pieces of content that I have ever created. But objectively, in thinking about what I have contributed to the drum industry in my career, I have to include the content on my website, on orlandodrummer.com. And I know that a vast majority of you guys have never seen that content. But if I'm including that in what I've given to the drum industry, the reality is that I have created more drum lessons than any one human, than any one drummer would ever need. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 160 hours of content. And to give you a perspective on that, imagine you went to Guitar Center and you bought an educational drum DVD. I've made over 50 of those. It is genuinely enough for a lifetime. And let me be clear, this is not an ad for my website. I hope you go start a free trial, check it out, and see if you like it. But I didn't make this video to tell you about all the content that I've made over the last 10 years. I'm telling you all of this because I want you to understand how I look at my relationship to the drum industry. I'm not leaving the drum industry by any means, and I'm also not done making drum content or drum lessons by any means. But I don't think there is a valid argument that I already haven't left a lot here. I've been doing the same thing for a really long time. And this industry has demanded a lot from me over the last 10 years. And I'm finally feeling a sense of completion, at least when it comes to the specific styles of content that I've been making. I'm really happy with what I have made, and it feels like it's time for a change. Not an exit, not an end, but a change. And yes, I totally understand. Some of you are gonna say, but in your last video, you were saying you weren't gonna change anything. And I get it, I totally understand. But to be clear, I'm not making a shift towards pure entertainment, because again, I really don't care to be your source of entertainment, not who I am. But as the topics running through all of our minds become heavier and more introspective this year, I think longer format discussions, longer format content, and just the true expansion of our ideas is more important than creating another 2,500 drum lessons. The educator in me is just ready to contribute something different. So moving forward into 2021, the content that you'll see on this channel will be different. And that's not to say that I won't be making any drum lessons. I actually have tons of educational projects that I'm in the middle of. Member November is coming up. I got a lot of lessons coming out then. But I do want to lean into these two new podcasts, these new formats, and just enjoy the freedom that comes with that. It feels good to take a step back from curating my content so heavily and loosen up a little bit. I hope you guys will take that journey with me on both this platform and on the new one. If you want to check out either of these two new podcasts, you can find some information in the description. The non-drumming podcast, All In With Adam, is completely separate from my drum platforms, different Instagram, different YouTube channel. And selfishly, I ask that you go subscribe, like, and drop a comment on episode 1. It is a very heavy one. You've been warned. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I appreciate it as always, and I will catch you in the next one. Later.